All right, welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast. It is powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every episode, we talk to the experts to get their take on the ever-changing digital, social, and marketing landscape. This show is no different. I'm joined, as always, episode number 61 by producer Will. And obviously, we always thank Dave Ferker for all his help setting up the pod. But producer Will, we got a special guest here on the pod today.
Yeah, a brand I think everybody knows, Scott from Patagonia, who runs stuff on their digital side. So we're super excited to have him on. I think everybody knows about Patagonia on the product side and also kind of on the activism side, which I know he wants to touch on.
Yeah, Will continues to, just really land just some mammoths, of some whales of brands here. I mean, starting with the COVID panels that we had earlier in the year, and just continues. What a run you're on.
We need to have our North Star, and maybe that's like Rob Pelinka or something like that.
Rob Pelinka.
our dream guest.
Rob Pelinka. Let's get Bezos, Okay. That's our dream. All right, so episode number 61, we had a little huddle here before the show, and we're going to have to, at least for now, until we get to the 80s, about 20 episodes here. I'm sorry to all my sports geeks. We're going to have to retire the sports numbers and move to what I think is a good idea, celebrity age, right? So we go from a bunch of nobodies in the 60s, 80s, no offense. Again, Dennis Rodman, number 73 on the Lakers. And we go to celebrity ages. So instead of giving me the random people that were wearing number 61 in the NFL back in 1964, why don't you give me some names of celebrities who are the ripe young age of 61 and see what we'll call this podcast.
All right, I'm on the famouspeople.com/age61, which I don't know why this website exists. I'm going to just rifle through a few.
I will say, we'll Google it, celebrities who are 61 and celebrities who are 61.com or something like that came up. So great.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to rifle off a few of them.
Hey, talking to the microphone. Well, yeah, that'd be great.
James Spader,
there you go.
Hugh Lowry, Val Kilmer, Sean Bean, Irvin Magic Johnson.
Oh.
I don't know who that is. Steve Borden, Simon Cowell, American Idol, Rahm Emanuel. There's an Al Yankovic and then a Weird Al Yankovic. I don't know why he gets two different ones. Okay. Tony Robbins. And Norm Macdonald. We'll end it there. A lot of celebrities who are 61, though.
That's tough. Magic. I feel like you can't pick a sports guy because we've done that for 60 episodes. Simon Cowell. How about the Tony Robbins podcast? My favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes of all time. If you want to look for obstacles, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. That's glass half full mentality
right there. Yeah, Tony Robbins.
I love that quote. All right, the Tony Robbins podcast. We are joined, like Will said, by Scott Carrington, SDSU grad, by the way. Well, I guess he got his master's over at SDSU, so it's gonna be great to welcome another Aztec. He leads up the digital marketing, media, and advocacy team over at Patagonia. They do a lot of great work, which I was, after doing some research, and I know, Will, you did as well. I didn't really realize how much work they actually do on the philanthropy side and just really giving back to that community. So it's really awesome. And we'll dig more into that as well. But I'm excited so much to talk about a brand that so many of you are big fans of, and we'll learn a lot from Scott from Patagonia. Here we go. All right. He leads the digital marketing team, media, and advocacy over at Patagonia. His name is Scott Carrington. Scott, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for having the time.
Yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, I usually kick things off with a random question. I know you grew up in the Jersey Shore, so I wanted to ask you: is the situation, is that a kind of a good representation of a young Scott Carrington back in the day, or not quite?
Yes. I was a little tanner. That world definitely exists. It's in isolated towns, but it's yes, that brings back some memories.
I bet. That's so funny. And I know too, you got your master's at San Diego State, so go Aztecs. Got a fellow Aztec here on the pod, which is always nice to see. So I know you know San Diego well. Well, can you give the listeners just kind of a breakdown of all that you oversee? Because, when we hear the word marketing, digital marketing, that's about 94 different verticals these days. So I'd love to kind of hear all that you oversee and kind of what you love digging into over at Patagonia.
Yeah. Digital, it almost means so much, it means nothing. My world really, from the theme of the work is really community building and activation. And by activation, I mean engagement with our content, and then on the advocacy front. So, but the work, I guess the tangible work is social media, paid media, digital advocacy, and then content marketing. And it's all very much, intertwined.
I love asking this question to almost all my guests, especially when you're overseeing a marketing role. How do you just approach marketing? What's your core belief on how to approach it?
Gosh, well, it's a overused word at Patagonia and elsewhere, but just authenticity. We're a mission-driven brand, and we really wear our heart on our sleeve, and it's really just staying true to the mission, true to that. Just telling our story in new and interesting ways, and differentiating ourselves from other brands and competitors.
Another thing I always like to ask is just getting people's different takes on the difference of sales and marketing. Because this is where I think a lot of brands, Patagonia does a tremendous job at this, creating community, being authentic, being genuine with your audience. But so many, Fortune 500 brands get this wrong. But how do you separate the difference from, all right, this is a marketing initiative versus this is a sales initiative?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Even how we're set up from departmentally, it both creates tension, but it provides space to both be the storytellers that we want to be, but also achieve what we need to achieve in sales to continue to be in operation. From the marketing point of view, I really look at it from a KPI lens. It's quite different. I'm thinking about it from those more, I guess, upper funnel KPIs, and really through the lens of content, which is more around rich and deep engagement. Time on story is a metric that I like to use, and then it's sort of how and what that really means is how many minutes did somebody spend on a blog post, or how many minutes on average did somebody spend watching our film. So trying to measure deep engagement there, and then we unlike really any other brand have this digital advocacy arm where we are supporting the work of over 1,200 environmental nonprofits, and so and we do that through a variety of ways, but ultimately driving attendance to their events, getting their petitions out in front of our audience and a like-minded audience, finding volunteers for them, raising money for them. So those are KPIs that are unique, and instead of we think about that as a ladder of engagement. It's really a term borrowed from the nonprofit space, but we're moving people up the ladder of engagement versus down, down the funnel. And really that's a virtuous flywheel at the end.
Right. And which at the end of the day, if you focus on that, it's just going to lead to more brand loyalists, more purchases, more people that want to just be a part of your product.
Yeah. And we bank on that. We don't market activism, or we don't use we don't market product based on our activism, right?
Right.
We can really market, or promote or talk about activism to our product customers. So it's a bit of a one-way street, but it certainly does do all the things that you mentioned. From a brand loyalty factor, folks who come in through that side of our storytelling and the work that we do, they're immediately values aligned, and that creates a strong bond, almost immediately.
That's awesome. Yeah, as we get into the show, I do want to dig more into the community you guys have been able to build, especially on digital. But I kind of want to stop talking about it, but I think it's such a big it's a big moment. I don't want to say the word COVID anymore. Let's try to move past this. But for every brand, this is going to be something that, you and I, for the rest of our careers, are going to look back at this year, and not only what it did for the future of marketing, but also how we got through it and how we adjusted and how we evolved and pivoted is a famous term. But looking back the last 12 months for you guys, how did you guys navigate it? How did you guys pivot? And, from an e-com standpoint, I know all brands saw record numbers and things like that. So just love to hear kind of what happened at Patagonia.
Yes, we were pretty early to shut down our retail operation and our e-commerce operation because we shut down our distribution center.
Yeah.
And and ultimately some folks got furloughed, and we hit the brakes on really like any product marketing, because you can purchase our product. But what that did in the silver lining, I guess, in that for the work that I do, was really that we really put a spotlight on our content, making sure we were getting our stories in front of our audience. Early on it was about like, entertaining folks.
Escapism, yeah.
I felt like we were like, going to wait it out for 2 or 3 weeks and then, get back to real life. And, but it really helped us organize in a manner that we could put out content to a variety of different audiences, have a bunch of stories in market, right? But like very, very targeted to specific audiences. And, we really leveraged both like new work that we had coming out, and then also dipping into our back catalog of films and the written word. We've always been great storytellers, but historically we hadn't been great at the distribution of the content. So this really helped us focus. We also, in order to make all this happen, just changed some roles around on the team, and that is something that has stuck with. That's gonna carry on. We've kind of stood up. It's a cross-functional team, but it's like a content marketing team. We never really, formalize that, and so it's been great. And again, it comes back to some of those metrics, right? It's not about ROAS. It's really about like time with story, engagement, creating conversation.
How do you think consumer behavior for your customers have changed because of 2020, and does that change any initiatives or things that you guys are looking to do in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, with a big part of the last 12 months really has been stabilizing the business, but I think like some of the trends, I mean, what's been really interesting to see, folks aren't traveling, and so there's so many more people getting out, like biking, the ocean surfing,
like in their 5 mile radius of their house, almost more so than traveling.
So there's a real just outdoor gear and apparel, certainly in demand. You can see this certainly in like the hard goods space with like, try and order a mountain bike right now, you're going to be waiting 12 to 18 months. So there's a lot of upside. I think it's just brought people, they're reconnecting with nature, and so that's great. And that's great for us in a variety of ways. Certainly like we sell product, but the idea behind, falling in love with the place, you fall in love with the place, that's you end up wanting to protect that place. And so, that really falls in line with our mission. And so it's, again, there's it's a nice silver lining for certainly the business. And then of course for like, what we sort of need to do to save the planet.
Yep, absolutely. Whether it's storytelling or call it a campaign, like what has been the most successful campaign or story that you guys have been able to tell that really drove a lot of, whether conversion or just time spent, like you've been talking about earlier? Any favorite campaigns you could think of since you've been at Patagonia?
Gosh, I guess my favorite campaign is one that came together in like, 10 or 11 days. And it was November 2016. And this is, post the election. And, you can probably imagine around the Patagonia office, it wasn't like everybody was
no high fives and back.
We were not high fiving, and the mood was dark.
Yep.
And we were still, we had some, I think, plans, going into the holiday period, but it was just like a light sort of went on, and one of our designers like threw out an idea as sort of some brainstorming sessions were happening. Like, hey, let's why don't we? So I guess to set the stage here, we are the founding member of like 1% for the Planet. So we give away 1% of revenue to these, environmental like grassroots nonprofits, right? So for like the Black Friday period, Cyber Week, the idea that got thrown out was, hey, why don't we give it all away, 100% for the planet?
Yep.
And that was a pretty big idea and a pretty big price tag on that idea. And like the amazing thing was that it went from like an idea, and it's a couple text chains up the up the communication ladder, and it was green lit, and like it was off to the races to get that thing together. And there was there's no paid media around it. It was just like such a feel good thing. And so we ended up, I forget the number, but it was definitely like
10 million, I think I read, right?
Yeah, over 10 million or so. So
Crazy.
that was, it was just it was a mood changer, in some ways, how it raised gave away a ton of money.
And just, listening to a few interviews with your CEO, it seems like that just comes from a top-down approach where he's super open and definitely green lights those type of ideas where maybe, your average CEO would be like, well, why don't we save a little bit of this money?
Yeah. And that's some of the beauty of Patagonia. I mean, everybody, his values align there. And it's also, it's a privately owned company, and it's so you can make those decisions without
the quarterly earnings report coming out,
Yeah. Exactly.
So I want to talk about just what you've seen. I mean, what's interesting about you too is your background at Nixon. So just like, and then obviously you've been on the agency side too. So we can probably either Sarah cry or laugh together on the agency side a little bit or here at STN. But what are some things that you learned on the agency side and going to Nixon and Patagonia that you just continue to bring with you each and every career step that you've made, whether it was an aha moment or epiphany or just like how you approach what you do in your day to day?
Yeah, I think my approach was probably developed, before moving over to the agency side. In that, I had a small publishing startup. I took a job out of school, and about a year later took off to go travel for a bit. And when we came back, my girlfriend at the time and I started an educational publishing company, and it wasn't till cash out in 5 years. It was like the Tim Ferriss version of starting a business. It was like, we want the 4-hour work week. We want to, France and wherever we can. So, but it was an amazing learning experience, like as an entrepreneur, because it was all bootstrapped. It was this is like 2001, right? So email marketing just taking off, Google search marketing taking off. And so I was just learning all that stuff, trial and error, and like sink or swim. And so taking that forward, I actually ended up taking that into a graduate degree, like entrepreneurship, and that business was the project through that. And so nice. And that sort of the relationship dissolved, and so I went on to do other things. But I think what I took from that was like the love for entrepreneurship, and which is like, in a lot of ways just problem solving, finding solutions, bringing new ideas to different challenges. And so that's kind of what led me into, or what I brought forward into the agency world. I had, and what I guess I can cry with you definitely on some of those experiences for sure. But just working across so many different businesses and trying to solve different business challenges in different industries was really awesome. It's like you kind of really fast forward to get that experience, whereas you don't necessarily you don't like cycle through all of that when you're on the client side. So it was but at the same time, I definitely wanted to be on the brand side. I come from a board sports background, as a kid. So I wanted to, get into that where I had passion. And so that's what really drove me into Nixon. I certainly had the digital experience, just kind of a digital generalist by then, both from like e-com and just tactically and whatnot, and strategically in terms of working with large clients. So, and what was going on there at the time was that digital was, it wasn't really a thing. I mean, there was an e-commerce business, but it was unattended to, and it, so it was a real opportunity to come in and build out a team, like redesign, come in, redo a website, just stand the digital practice up at Nixon. So it was an awesome experience. And that ultimately led me to Patagonia, at least that experience, being on the client side and moving over to Patagonia. I mean, what really got me to Patagonia was just the mission-driven aspect of the brand, right? There are a lot of outdoor companies out there. There are a lot of companies in the surf space, but I read Let My People Go Surfing, which is a book by Yvon Chouinard. And like when I finished that at 2 a.m, I was like on the website. I was like,
you're on the careers page.
And just so happened there was there was like my what my role was when I started on the website. And so I was like up all night, cranking out a cover letter and nice. And 4 months later I was moving awesome. Up to this area.
Yeah, I love how you articulated that, because I think in this industry, you just have to really enjoy adjusting, tweaking, evolving almost on a weekly, at the latest monthly basis with all these different platforms coming out. And I've told my team too, like the only constants change. Like, so right when you get that perfect recipe, you're going to have to stir it all up again and start anew, because, even little things, like very micro things, like, oh, Instagram Reels is doing really well right now, but they don't show you the impressions on that content right now. So in the next 4 months, you kind of have to create your own algorithm to see if it's working or not. Just little things like that you have to almost enjoy that. If you don't, you're going to kind of get chewed up and spit out in this industry.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the exciting part of it. I mean, you're at the intersection of like media and marketing and technology, and what worked today,
right?
And the advice you gave to somebody today is
not
totally different tomorrow. And it's also, I'm sure certainly being on the agency side, you're sort of out there and you're like, look, I'm out here in the, in the future, and there's this cool thing, and you got to kind of bring it back to everybody. And you're always going in that direction. So sometimes there's friction in that, but
exactly.
It's the exciting place.
Well, that leads me to another good question. And I like asking this to different people on this subject is, when do you choose to go into a new platform? And as you know, things sprout up and become legitimate players in the space. We've saw TikTok over the last 18 months, how they've really become Gen Z central. Now you see things like Clubhouse, where I'm sure with your guys' mission-driven type of work, like there's an opportunity for you there. But how do you guys approach whether let's hang back and keep on trucking and we'll deal with that later, or oh my goodness, we should really drop everything and start thinking about this?
We're a little slower these days to go into new platforms. Did a fair bit of that years ago. I'm totally spacing on the platform that I think was owned by Yahoo at the time. Just as a good example, but like Tumblr and other platforms that were hot a couple of years ago that you don't even hear about these days. So we're a little more cautious at this point. There's the tried and true platforms, but it's at the end of the day, it's really about like the audience that's there. You have a sense it's going to be lasting. So,
and if your core demographic is in that space type thing too.
Exactly. But we're definitely taking a bit more of a cautious approach, and that may change in kind of moving into this new sort of post-COVID world. But I think some of the opportunities change just in social in general that are less about like, let's set up shop, and it's rented space at the end of the day, big audience. And now 3% of your audience on Facebook actually sees any given post, right? So I think there's also like some tactical mind shift that really probably needs to happen. I mean, I see opportunity not as like setting up a Facebook group, right? Like just take Facebook as an example, but just going into those groups and engaging and being part of the conversation versus trying to like, bring people in to join you and you lead the conversation versus being part of it.
Yeah, we had one of the heads over at Reddit on the podcast a short time ago, and he said, lurking is learning. You're allowed to go into Reddit and just like learn what the community is saying, and like you said, engage with them, and that's definitely an approach brands should take. I think you guys have figured this out. This is kind of reaching nirvana in a way in marketing, because so many of your colleagues in different brands have probably just hoping and praying that their leadership or their sales team understands like, oh, we should tell stories. We should create valuable content. We should make sure that we're being genuine to the community and not just hitting them over the head with, hey, buy this. This is a cool new thing. So walk me through internally at Patagonia. If you guys are coming out with a new product, if you guys are really excited about like a new fall lineup that you guys are launching before the winter season, how do those conversations work? Because I'm sure from your standpoint, you're like, great, how do we weave in a story to make sure that we're amplifying these new amazing products, but not in a salesy way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, anything that we're sort of bringing to market, like in a bigger way. I mean, there is, you know, I don't want to say 100% of the time, but usually there is a story there, like a supply chain story or like a tech, like innovation story. And so it doesn't, and we don't tell it, you know, it kind of gets down to how you tell it as well. Because there's not really we're not at conflict bringing that to market. I guess where it does get maybe uncomfortable is when it's like retargeting ads and it's a product lay down shot, things like that. But you know, we're super proud of the, you know, the supply chain innovation and just the, you know, the pinnacle product that we put out there. So and we want to celebrate it. And then it's really how I think, you know, how do you tell that story that's true to you?
Yeah. And then do you guys have like different buckets that you work in when it comes to telling those stories? Like, do you usually do it by vertical? Is it each product? Like, how do you, I guess, determine your different, not so much campaigns, but how much content that you're going to be kind of pushing towards? Because you said supply chain innovation, there's different ways that you can kind of tell those stories based on what the product may be.
Yeah. So I think, you know, we make product for sport. We're a human, you know, mostly human powered sport. So, and when you break that up, it's, you know, it's skiing and snowboarding, it's trail running, it's climbing, it's surf and so on. And then we've got a food business and a few other sort of subsidiary type brands, but those are all, there's a marketer for each one of those verticals. Okay. And then there's like we've got a full like kind of in-house creative agency, and then like, you know, shared services from like, you know, retail marketing and, you know, the digital and communications and stuff like that. So that's really where it's all derived from. It really does come bottom up. And again, that kind of gets at the, like, those marketers and those, the folks making product for, say, mountain bike or something, they're the closest to their community. So we're more like, you know, there's a, I guess, top down framework.
Yep.
But all those stories bubble up, bottom up.
That's super cool. I just believe, like, with everything that happened in 2020, right? You guys have been out in front of it, whether it's COVID, social injustice, the Capitol Hill uprising, the whole thing that went down. I guess, what do you think a brand's position or a brand's responsibility should be with these different moments? I know Patagonia is like, you guys are clear on kind of where you stand, the mission, but some brands maybe aren't clear on their mission or how they should approach that. But do you have like a advice or thoughts on how brands should approach some of these big moments that happen in our country or to our people?
You know, that's a great question and a tough question and a tough place to give advice. But I think there's, you know, just communities are looking more and more at companies to fill, you know, to fill the space that really, I guess, government is like leaving unfilled. Mm-hmm. And I think I think there is a responsibility for brands to speak up and start to fill some of that role in terms of, you know, bringing in new voices to the conversation, taking a stand. I mean, and I think, you know, there's piles of research that will say that's good for your business too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Customers and you know, they want to buy from brands and companies where there's a values alignment. So, but you know, that's the benefit, right? That's sort of like that's the great outcome. But like, you know, there's just a responsibility, I think, to move the world forward on all those.
Absolutely. When it comes to your content too, have you guys had success with ambassadors, influencers, different content creators that you're able to tap into or kind of bring into your family of Patagonia when you guys want to create either it's user-generated content or maybe a hero piece, but you want to premiere or promote one of your amazing ambassadors? Yeah, well, they're all, you know, the origins of like our ambassadors is really through like, you know, product testing, and that's they are the product testers. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, you know, and today they certainly all
qualify as influencers as well, but I don't think that's not how we think of our ambassadors. But they certainly have a ton of influence, and they're behind the products that we make. And so they're certainly invited to participate in any and all campaigns. And of course, we lean on those folks for just creating stories and capturing stories and being out in the field and all that, being out with the photographers and all that amazing photography that you see. We don't dabble in like the paid influencer space.
Right.
But we do, we have a full network of photographers and videographers and friends of the brand, let's call it, who we work with.
And you guys think that, I mean, I'm sure because your brand is so strong and there's so many people that are brand loyalists, like it seems like a lot of that stuff can be organic and people are actively doing this even on their own, opposed to maybe a newer brand that is just hoping and praying people are talking about their brand off channel.
Yeah. And we're not, we can be provocative. We can make some noise, and we have almost a 50-year history of that too. So it's tough to compare to a new brand. Like, there was no advertising, for a long time. It was really built on, it's a catalog business and built on word of mouth and earned media. So we got a head start in that.
You guys are doing pretty good in that area. What many brands dream of. So where do you think the undervalued attention is in digital and social right now?
Undervalued. Well, I think somewhat we touched on a little bit, but like not trying to create necessarily your own community, but going out and joining the conversation where it's happening. And you mentioned Reddit. I mean, we're looking, we spend some money with Reddit, but I do also see a real like organic opportunity to join the conversation, especially on our environmental advocacy and activism front, but also, I mean, there's so much going on in Reddit, right? But and same thing with Facebook groups. So I think there's but again, that's that like tactical mind shift. You're sort of being out there as like a digital ambassador for the brand, just a conversationalist, and that's a somewhat of a different role from like the traditional.
Well, it's funny too. Like I don't think marketers talk enough about this. Is social inherently the definition is a two-way conversation. And not enough times do brands or products, I think, make it an effort, whether we're going to hire somebody to focus on this or we're going to outsource it or what have you. It's like we need to make sure that we're having this conversation, not just talking at our community, but talking with them. So I totally agree with that. And it seems like you guys take that seriously too across your owned and operated. Yeah.
And it's, you have to move at a quick pace. It's like marketing at the speed of culture and,
right.
And politics in today's news cycle. And it's not always, most marketing departments are not necessarily set up to meet that need. So it definitely, it's, and we have, it's challenging for us as well at times. So, but that's, I certainly, big opportunity there. I think too, like LinkedIn, especially most brands are like, hey, this job's available or this and that. And, but I think, part of at least in our old mission statement, but it's still a key, principle and pillar of what we do, but like use business to inspire. So we've got, we have a real strong point of view in that channel, but it's one of our top performing channel there.
Yeah. The organic reach on LinkedIn is still pretty incredible. They haven't clenched down the algorithm like Zuckerberg has just yet. So we'll see.
Exactly. I wonder what's coming. But then, especially in YouTube too, now that they sort of, it's like a slow easing into these like more traditional social media.
Second biggest search engine in the world. People forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, tapping into, and we make a ton of film. So it's, it makes sense.
Yeah. You mentioned time spent quite a bit, but when Scott, when you're putting together your executive summary or your quarterly report or whatever it may be for maybe some of the higher ups, what are some of the metrics that KPIs that you're just looking at that you're, high-fiving your team if you guys have hit those at the end of the day?
Yeah. From a content point of view, it's what I said earlier. I mean, it's really metrics around just deep engagement. So that's that time on story. Average watch time for a film. We want to know that people are spending time with this content that we're making. And if we get it in front of the right people, we certainly see that they do. of course, like, impressions and reach are important. On the, at the top of that ladder of engagement are the things like, event RSVPs and petition signatures and donations and skilled volunteering hours. And those are pretty unique to our work. And then of course, and I mentioned it earlier, but that's sort of like the e-com business, of course, has a lot of the traditional, ROAS and based CPC based metrics.
That's awesome.
But we also, it's we probably have some like untraditional metrics too. Like no problem if we lose some followers at some point. That could be a win. Yeah, we
100%
got rid of the trolls following us, or the folks that don't agree with us. So
you guys do such a good job, I think, with authenticity, the community, bringing value to your followers and consumers. Is there any other brands that you just enjoy? It could be brand, it could be a media publisher, but anybody that you personally follow that you think just do a really good job of bringing that community together and providing that value?
Yeah, I always appreciate what Ben and Jerry's is doing. Organizationally, I love the World Economic Forum just in terms of how they package their content, and they take some like really complex ideas or like topics and boil that down, and it's usually pretty uplifting. From like media organizations, I mean, Now This and Vox are always pretty interesting in how they approach things. I think Burton, I really enjoy what Burton's been doing lately. They had a great call out for the Bernie Sanders meme that was going around. And he was actually wearing a Burton piece.
And you mentioned Ben and Jerry's. I mean, probably that should be studied in marketing school, what they were able to do as a social injustice, kind of being just did a good job of moving quickly and saying the right thing. So, or PR school, as you say.
Yeah. They're the special crew.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So I wanted to ask you a couple, hot take or quick take questions here towards the end. Rapid fire, I should say. Any tools or resources that you guys use internally or you personally use that make your job and life easier?
Gosh, job and life easier. Well, from a tactical planning tool, we're big fans of Asana.
Yep.
But from making my life easier, I mean, a lot of that is like, for me, it's just like the attention economy here and being in digital, it's a little, it's I'm sure it's a little crazy. And so for me, some of that stuff is like turning off notifications, using that feature on your iPhone where you turn it to a black and white screen.
After I watched Social Dilemma, I'm like, you know what? No more. I got notifications from YouTube and Postmates and like, hey, $3 off, and it's you don't realize how. I mean, it's constant.
Yeah. And so a lot of it is, for me, is been around just making it so I can focus and honestly think there.
Yeah.
And then from like a work point of view, we're a complex business, and there's a lot of there are a lot of different product categories. There's a lot going on, right? So for me, and I, it's just kind of creating like decision-making frameworks, that are drawn, from a top-down strategy that are just helpful in order to, prioritize and sort of make sense. And they're not hard and fast rules, but just having those sort of frameworks when you're operating in this sort of like shared services reality is, really helpful. I mean, what populates all that is very much bottom up and real, but it's like a organizing principles.
I find myself doing that matrix, like the urgent but not important, like that whole, because like you said, everything, especially in digital, feels like it's urgent, needs to be done yesterday, and you have to kind of a huge part of a role like yours is like just making sure, like, all right, let me put this in order for my team to make sure we're not losing our mind type thing. So that's awesome. Any book or newsletter or blog that you read frequently or gift people that you think is kind of a must read or follow?
On the book front, I just read Think Again by Adam Grant, which I thought was fabulous. And also Sapiens, and I'm going to probably mispronounce his name, but Yuval Harari. And then, from there, I've kind of got into the YouTube rabbit hole with him. He's just super interesting, and the perspective just on like humanity is, it's sort of looking at it at like the tectonic plates shifting level.
Wow.
So it's pretty interesting. And then, I guess, I'm less, a blog reader as I am, listening to podcasts these days. Not necessarily work related, but very much a fan of like Sam Harris.
Me too.
Been a long time fan of Tim Ferriss, like Oprah's podcast. You mentioned it earlier, but as a Jersey native that's still home and still listening to and Bruce, like Springsteen and Obama have this podcast.
Oh,
really?
That's awesome.
Enjoying.
Yeah, I'm reading Obama's book right now. It's pretty interesting to take. So.
I just finished that one as well. And of course, shameless plug for a blog, I suppose. It's The Cleanest Line, which is the Patagonia blog.
Nice. There you go.
You spend a lot of time.
Any advice? You've had a pretty impressive career thus far, but any advice for? I just talked to a group of students at our alma mater, in a sense, San Diego State, yesterday, and always looking for advice. But any advice for up and coming marketers that want to enter this space that you and I call home?
Yeah, well, I think you were getting at the long-term advice I'd give everybody. Like, plan on reinventing yourself many times during your career. It's it's like 50 years ago, you could say, what's the future look like 20 years from now? And you'd probably be kind of right. And you could have, done that in 1980, you probably could have been right. But the rate of change, like technology, is like insane. And we're at that sort of like that point on the exponential curve where it's just going to go nuts. And like, I don't know, you do that thought exercise of like, what do things look like in 20 years from now? And it's like impossible. Some of the things, like from a futurist point of view, are just insane.
Right.
So, be prepared to reinvent yourself many, many times. But I think too, like making sure you sort of identify your passion, right? And kind of cross that up with what you're good at or what you want to be good at, and start there, because it's like, if you're you love films, like make films or work in the film industry. If you are a skier, like, and that's your thing, like work in the ski industry, you will be so much happier. And you can do marketing. There's going to be marketing jobs in all those industries. A robot might be doing them in 20 years, but you'll have reinvented yourself.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's like, it is so any job, right? But like, I think marketing too, it can be, long hours or stressful, or things change on a dime. And unless you have that underlying passion for the purpose or the company, it could be difficult. Like you said, it could chew you up and spit you out if you don't have that, that kind of gets you up in the morning vibe every time. We love to ask this question as well. Anybody in your network that you would nominate that you think would be a great other guest of the show, and you think would be a good person to speak with?
Yeah, that's he reached out to me yesterday, and we worked together at Nixon, and he's just a wonderful person, and would be good to speak to here.
Okay.
From an e-commerce background, but his name is Josh Gabe at Burton. He's like the head of e-com over there.
Nice. Awesome. Love to talk to Josh. Beautiful, man. All right. So my final question, this is a tough one. I hate to put you on the spot, but with what happened with, this last 12 months and what you've seen in your career thus far, like where are we going? Like, what are some things that you're excited about, or maybe some mini predictions that you have, just like, you and I chat over coffee 5 years from now, like, remember we were talking about this thing. Anything come to mind that you're excited about? Gosh,
there's going to be so many learnings that come out of this, and I and a lot of silver linings, and I just hope that we learn from it all, I'm excited to get on an airplane one of these days and go somewhere.
Yeah.
But as far as it relates to work, I think it's just going to be like, a lot of companies and industries were sort of, well along their way in their digital transformation. But I think for anybody that's catching up, this was like you're
going to be out of business if you don't take it seriously. You
can't afford to fall behind anymore.
Well, Scott, man, thanks so much. Thanks for all the great work you're doing too on the philanthropy front and everything Patagonia is doing for change. Really, really appreciate it. All you guys are doing, and thanks so much for taking the time, man. This was awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks, Scott. Talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Cool. All right, there he was, Scott Carrington from Patagonia. Will, another great conversation, another great guest here on the Business of Social. I know that provided some value to a lot of your listeners. I know I learned a lot from that show as well, or this show as well. I thought it was interesting that, again, I really feel like brands are like salivating at the mouth to what Patagonia has been able to do, because their CEO understands, like, wow, if we can be good humans, if we can have a mission, if we can go out there and create these communities and these opportunities to donate and make our planet better, it's ultimately just going to lead. It's not all about a clickbait campaign. This is like a long-term strategy, the 50 years of building that community. And now the brand is so strong and there's so many brand loyalists that they can really reap the benefits of just, doing what's right with their brand. So it's awesome to kind of see that, because I know so many marketing groups wish, sales and CEOs got that part rather than, let's drive a bunch of dark posts for conversions on the website.
I think just to sum everything he set up is they put their money where their mouth is. They lead by example, they lead with money, and they lead with action.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that Fortune 500s are going to have to continue to get right. I know we harp a lot on this show, but over, my prediction over the next 5 to 7 years is, the brands are really going to make it on the stock exchange, and also just in general are going to have a purpose, a mission. I just think the millennials, Gen Z, they want to make sure they're aligned with the brand that aligns with their values, maybe aligns with, what their thoughts are on diversity and all those different things. And if you're just like, turn a blind eye to it or not caring, and you're all about the product, I think you'll be left in the dust, sooner rather than later. So these brands, I think, that have those values are really starting to, take their reign in the industry. And then I think you notice that a lot of other brands that never before spoke up on anything. We all remember Michael Jordan, Republicans buy sneakers too. That was a mindset for so many brands, but now I feel like to be authentic, like you said earlier, and so many of our guests will have said that, just that authenticity. To be authentic, you have to realize that your consumer are a bunch of people of different age groups, different colors, different backgrounds. So if you're going to respect your consumer from them purchasing your product, then you got to kind of respect their values as well.
I think like you said with Ben and Jerry's too, you have to lead by example, and it can't be reactive. You have to be proactive in that space. So we've been doing this for years. This is our beliefs, and not wait for something to happen and say, oh yeah, now we're going to change, and now we're going to try this. Because like you said, the younger consumers will find that stuff out.
Yep, absolutely. So good stuff from Scott. Really appreciate his coming on the program. We appreciate it. So, all right, as always, we always like to thank Dave Ferker and Will Kelly, producer Will. Did we figure that out yet? I'm not going to say it on this in case someone squats on it.
I looked. It's been squatted.
Really?
Yeah.
At producer Will on Twitter, or we have to
call
buy
a
this
favor up to someone at Twitter. Yeah.
Might hit our boy David Herman up on Twitter. Maybe our boy TJ Autoshow. Let's see if he can. Are they active? Are they have any followers?
I think there's a rule if they're not active for 6 months, you can swoop in.
Yeah, I know, but are they active?
Producer Will didn't seem super active, but I think it depends on what they define as active.
That's unfortunate. So. That's tough to hear. But yeah, we are on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. We always ask you to, if you guys find any value at all from this podcast, as you know, it's absolutely free. All we ask for in return is a 5-star review on iTunes and maybe a little review there. So we appreciate it. Will, we got some big shows coming up. And I know we just did quite a few amazing ones with obviously Ash from Reddit, and Scott obviously from Patagonia. But we got a few. We got our first ever 2 part 2s coming after 60. I don't think we've interviewed 2 people 61 episodes in. I mean, sorry, let me back that up. I don't think we've interviewed the same person twice 61 episodes in. We got 2 coming up.
The great Blake Lawrence has been on twice.
That's true. Blake. I forgot about Blake. All right, he's been on twice. But recently promoted to VP of social media, Katie Daly, who I joke with her. She's been promoted every year for the last decade over at ESPN. So she is one of my favorites, and we'll dig into it here. I think we're recording tomorrow as we sit here, right? And then we have Karen Kidlow, who we had a great show with her sister Lindsey Vaughn. But she's doing some great work on one of my favorite shows of all time, Entourage, the Victory podcast with Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly. And I want to dig into that with her and just kind of geek out more. So those are two amazing women in our industry that I just want to talk more with. An hour wasn't enough.
Yeah, I won't give away the secret sauce, but in terms of upcoming guests, we have pro sports, streaming, brand side of things, gaming, not outside of professional sports, Major Four, but I mean we have all brand side.
Can we shout out former guest Tatiana Holyfield as well, who probably gave us 9 different people.
I mean, from top to bottom, everybody was very generous with their network. So we are definitely flushing the pipeline.
Former guests that producer Will reached out to. If you guys emailed us back some, that was very, very thoughtful and very, very helpful because Will Kelly's able to just. I said, Will, I can't do 8 podcasts a week, but we got to slow it down here.
I asked a couple months ago, and I'm not kidding you. I'm still getting referral emails.
That's great.
To this day. So a huge shout out to everybody.
Crowdsourcing, another great thing we could all use in marketing and what we do every day. All right. Thanks to Furker. Thanks to producer Will. Thanks to you, the amazing listeners, for allowing us to be in your head for an hour, every week or so. This has been the Business of Social Podcast. My name is David Brickley. It's been powered by SDN Digital.